Stewart, it's nice to see you here in Dallas.
It's nice to be here in Dallas.
Yeah, where have you been the past 3 years?
I've been in prison for the past 3 years. Over a year in solitary confinement. So pre-trial, during my trial, and after. And then federal prison after that. Yeah.
In D.C.?
So Alexandria, Virginia, in the Alexandria, Virginia jail.
Which is D.C.?
Yeah, basically D.C. Then also the D.C., the Gulag, as they call it. I was in there for 6 weeks in solitary confinement there, too. And then at Lewisburg, what they call the Big House in Pennsylvania, I was there pre-sentencing. After my conviction, I went there for a couple months. And that was actually really nice because that was the first time I was outside again under the open sky in over a year. And I went to Lewisburg.
Oh.
And yeah.
First time you've seen the sky.
Open sky. Yeah. So, without a still great in between me. Yeah. So it was nice. So on that yard, we were there. I was there with other J6ers. We were all in a big unit together. It was very nice. Good fellowship. Yeah, really great.
How are the J6ers treated in prison?
Great. I never had any
by each other?
By each other, and also by the guards, and also by the other inmates.
Even in the Gulag?
Well, when they first got there, I wasn't there when they first got there. When they first got there, some of the guards, a lot of them were from Africa, African immigrants, and they'd been told that all the J6ers there were white supremacists. And so they initially thought they were a bunch of racists, and they were kind of mean to them. But once they realized that was a bunch of nonsense, then their conditions changed quite a bit. Yeah, but I never had any problems with guards because they all knew. Most of them are conservative, and rural America especially, most of the correctional officers are conservative and Trump supporters. And they would walk. Some of them even apologized to me, like we're sorry you're here. We know this is all a bunch of nonsense. I'm cleaning up my language. That's not what they called it. They said, we know it's a bunch of BS, but we just wanted to let you know that we understand that. So they were very sympathetic, and I never had an issue.
What about the black guards?
No problem. Yeah, same thing. So I worked as I used to be in the military. I was a paratrooper, and it's it's eerily similar to being in the military. You're thrown together with guys from all over the country, different races, black, white, Hispanic, Asian, Indians, and you're thrown together. Like feather, not dot. But why should both? We had both. We had some Indians and some Native Americans. So we're all thrown together from all over the place. Guys from the country, guys from the city, and you got to get along, just like in the military. So I know how to do that. So I had no issues. A lot of times you're treated how you treat other people. So you treat them with respect, and you're also humble. You've got to walk a fine line. I'm nobody's bitch, but I'm also not, puffing my chest out, trying to challenge anybody. So yeah.
Are the Oath Keepers? What's your role in or
I was
with?
The founder of Oath Keepers. That was my brainchild. So I created it.
But there was another fellow who was Mexican, half black.
No. You're thinking about Enrique Tarrio. That's a Proud Boys. Different organization. Enrique Tarrio is half Hispanic, I believe, and half black. That's a totally different organization. Okay. Now, Proud Boys and Oath Keepers were the two organizations targeted for the worst charges in January the 6th for seditious conspiracy. That the most scary label was put on us intentionally to further the false narrative that this was a planned attack on democracy, that President Trump was the kingpin of it. So we were cast as his. Think of it. The best way to think about January the 6th is a manufactured mob conspiracy case with President Trump cast as the mob boss, the shot caller, the kingpin, and then Tarrio and I, Proud Boys and Oath Keepers, cast as his lieutenants, and then our followers as his elite force of shock troops, his brown shirts or whatever they would want to say. That's the false narrative of J6, is that President Trump conspired with us to attack the Capitol. And the big tell is that Benny Thompson, who went on to chair the J6 Select Committee, he filed a lawsuit as the named plaintiff with other members of Congress way back on February the 16th, 2021, just a few weeks after J6, alleging a conspiracy with Trump, Giuliani, Proud Boys, and Oath Keepers to attack the Capitol and also to disenfranchise black voters. Because if you're challenging the election, their spin on it was, well, that's an attempt to disenfranchise black voters. That's a bunch of nonsense. That's how early the narrative was set. That was their goal, was to make that manufactured conspiracy true. All of our show trials, everything was done since then was just a way to get to their predetermined destination.
Being what?
Like I just said, a false narrative that President Trump conspired with Oath Keepers and Proud Boys to attack democracy, to stop the count, and then to disenfranchise black voters.
But even if Trump didn't conspire with you, they alleging that you were conspiring to assure him the presidency?
Excuse me, no, that's also false. We were there to do security. As we've done security 9 prior times in Washington, D.C., we have volunteer security, military and police, veterans who protect people. Because all through the Trump administration, starting his inauguration, in fact, our first security operation in D.C. was at Trump's inauguration on January 20th, 2017. Then Antifa had let it be known they're going to use force and violence to stop Trump supporters from attending the inauguration. And they did. They tried. They get all dressed in black bloc, they all dressed the same, so it's hard to identify who attacked you. And they did rage through the streets, breaking windows and set a limousine on fire. Turned out to be a limousine of a Muslim immigrant, which I thought was a little bit ironic. So they hurt one of their own people that they say they're trying to protect. So we were there doing volunteer escorts. What we do throughout the Trump administration is whenever there's rallies or events being held by Trump supporters, we would protect the events themselves successfully, or we would also offer escorts. Like at night, when folks are returning from the event back to their hotel room or to the metro stop, we would give them an escort, someone walking with them. Because Antifa, like jackals, they'll attack the elderly, women and children, and especially disabled veterans. See, with a veteran's cap on, they want to target because they hate those people. So we would protect them. In fact, we would be outside of Trump rallies. There'd be official Trump campaign rallies. We were not part of the rally itself, officially, but we would stay outside because Antifa knows that when you go into a Trump rally, you got to go through Secret Service screening. That means when you walk out of a Trump rally at night in the dark, walking back to your car, they know you're unarmed, you're defenseless. So we would offer armed security standing outside the venue, waiting in the street with a sign saying, if you want an escort back to your car, let us know. And we have retired police officers or military veterans carrying concealed to escort them back to their cars. And we would coordinate with Secret Service so they know who we are, where we are, and no misunderstandings. And we know where we can be armed and where we can't be. Some venues, it was the wall of the venue itself, that was their barrier. Other venues, it was the parking lot. So we just had to coordinate with them to find out where it was. We didn't actually coordinate with the Trump campaign at any time. I had no communication with President Trump or his staff. So all that's complete nonsense. We were just there to help the Trump supporters be safe on the way back to their cars. And we were very successful. And we also protected multiple free speech events, like in Berkeley, like downtown Berkeley, in the Martin Luther King Park, in March and April of 2017, we protected free speech events where Antifa prior had attacked people, and we were successful. In all of our years of doing all that, never once did anybody we were protecting ever get hurt, and never did we ever have to use force. No Oath Keeper ever shot anybody or punched, kicked, bludgeoned, or even pepper sprayed anyone. Because Antifa, they knew who we were, they knew our capacity, because retired cops and military, they didn't want to dance. They never closed on us. So it's a very good record, I think.
What does the oath in Oath Keepers represent?
That's the oath to the Constitution that we swear in service. Everybody in the government service must swear an oath to the Constitution and under Article 6. So in the military, same thing. Police, same thing. Taking an oath to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So that's what we take an oath for. I served as a paratrooper, I took that oath. Now when I became a lawyer later on, I took the same oath when I went to work for the Arizona Supreme Court. Went to Yale Law School, 2001 to 2004. When I graduated, I clerked for the Arizona Supreme Court. I took a similar oath then when you're sworn in as a law clerk. The same goes when you go and pass the bar in the state, you get sworn in, you take an oath to the Constitution. But our focus at Oath Keepers was on the guys with the guns, on the military, the police, and then close relation, firefighters, EMS, search and rescue, the people that might be ordered to do things that are unconstitutional, like the gun confiscation during Hurricane Katrina. It's a very good example of what happened in recent U.S. history.
In New Orleans?
Right. So you had, under the emergency conditions of a hurricane, you had police being brought and National Guard being brought in from all over the country to help, and then they ended up following unconstitutional orders. Many of them did, not all, but the mayor of New Orleans and the police chief declared that no one would be allowed to have guns. They're going to confiscate all the weapons. And they went around house to house taking guns away from peaceable Americans who were just trying to protect themselves and their property from looters. That's what they did. And unfortunately, a lot of the law enforcement officers from other states that came in to help wound up following these unconstitutional orders. Later, a judge ruled that the orders were illegal and unconstitutional, obviously, but that didn't help the people on the ground who were disarmed at that moment. So that's a big wake-up call. And we're like, hey, we need to make sure that police officers and National Guard and the military understand, here's the lines. Here's what the Bill of Rights says about people's rights. You can't cross these lines. If someone gives you an order that violates the Bill of Rights, whether it's the First Amendment or the Second Amendment or the Fourth or any of the Bill of Rights, you need to say no. You have a duty and responsibility. The same as you have a duty and responsibility under the laws of war to refuse an unlawful order. You know, when I was a paratrooper in the Army, we were taught the laws of war about things you cannot follow, things you can't do. Like the My Lai massacre was used as an example of an order that was given that violated the laws of war. When Lieutenant Cowley,
My Lai massacre.
Right, the My Lai massacre. So he shot women and children, and when he's put on when he was court-martialed, he defended himself by saying, "I was just following orders." Well, that's no defense, as we told the Nazis at Nuremberg. Just following orders is no defense. So in the military, we're taught that. They use that as an example. Nowadays, it's probably Abu Ghraib, I would imagine, of an excess, of something that's blatantly unlawful under the laws of war. That's great. So they're taught the laws of war and when to say no, but they're not taught the Bill of Rights. And so when they're used domestically, like National Guard or military being used after a hurricane, that's where you run into problems. That's what we're part of the reason why I founded the organization was to cure that issue, to make sure that they know what the law of the land in the United States, U.S. Constitution, Supreme Law of the Land, what it says, not just the laws of war.
So I saw a sweatshirt that a guy in the crowd was wearing. It said something about Auschwitz or Holocaust or something. Was this?
What crowd?
On January 6th outside the Capitol building. There was a guy.
So one asshole in the crowd?
Was he connected to Oath Keepers?
No, he wasn't.
Well, no. All I'm saying is
No,
whichever
of
group
course
he
not.
was associated with.
There was one guy carrying a rebel flag. He's not an Oath Keepers either. There's a bunch of people there that were not associated with Oath Keepers.
But the guy with this shirt became associated with, or they said was a part of either Oath Keepers or Proud Boys. Might have been Proud Boys. If you don't recognize it.
So. I doubt that. I said I doubt that. I mean, it's probably a false accusation. That's the problem. Is that, like I said before, it's what I call conflation. Like Southern Poverty Law Center, they'll talk about Timothy McVeigh, then they'll talk about some white supremacist somewhere or some actual neo-Nazi, then they'll talk about me. And the inference is, as well, we're all the same. So same thing with a crowd of people. Oh, among the people there associated with this rally was this guy wearing an Auschwitz shirt. So that makes it, there's an attempt to taint everyone there as though they're all a bunch of anti-Semitic Nazis. It's just nonsense. You go talk to any average Trump supporter at any Trump rally, you're not going to get that at all, right? Yeah. No different for Oath Keepers or Proud Boys. I mean, I'm not here to represent Proud Boys, but I'm letting you know, my organization, we didn't tolerate any racism of any kind. If you were, in fact, there's part of our bylaws, if you discriminate along racial or religious lines against anyone, you're out. You can't be a member.
Have you ever been to a temple?
Yes. Yeah.
Like how?
Well, like I said, I consider it a temple. I went to a Messianic synagogue in Plano when I was living here in Texas, with Rabbi David Schiller, right?
Are they practicing Jewish rituals, kind of Jewish prayers?
They do all, yeah. The dance and they have the Torah walking around and people touch and they say their prayers, yeah. I mean, I'm not versed in it, but yeah. I attended as a Christian. They're Christians too. They're Christ-believing Jews. Right. Yeah, that's what they call them, Messianic Jews. Yeah.
Were you considered political prisoners because you got involved in politics?
No, we were targeted for political reasons. The whole point of all those prosecutions was to try to disqualify President Trump under the 14th Amendment from being able to run for office again, or hold office again, to put him in prison if they could, and it was unprecedented in U.S. history for any president to be charged, so they did that. So they were trying to put him in prison, disqualify him under the 14th Amendment, or make him so radioactive politically that he couldn't hold office again. All that failed. That's why they had to try to kill him. I believe that twice they tried to kill him. Right. And that's why I got this tattoo on my arm, because that commemorates when he reacted like a warrior. He got shot, and his reaction was you have to go back to Teddy Roosevelt and then to George Washington or Andrew Jackson, that kind of courage under fire. That's the kind of manhood he showed. I thought it was a pivotal moment, and I'm sure it was for him too. I believe God saved him. I believe God saved him for a purpose, to save our country. And I think that's and to be a testament to humanity. This I believe is by the grace of God he's still alive, and he knows that too. He said so himself, And that's how I feel about. So I feel about what's been done to him and what's been done to us is very much like what's done to Joseph. So what man means for evil, God can use for good. So just as Joseph was sold into slavery by his brothers, and then later betrayed by his master's wife under false accusations. I know what that's like. I know it's like that someone bear false testimony against me. So, but God used all that for good. Same for us. Same for us J6ers. Same for President Trump.
Had President Trump...
We're stronger because of it. I feel stronger now. I'm not afraid of going to prison. I mean, I really wasn't in the first place. I was willing to... would not plead out to something I did not commit. I won't do that. And I will never bear false witness. The only person I could have borne false witness against to make a deal would have been President Trump himself. This is not going to happen. They threatened us with life in prison. I wadded that letter up and threw it in the friggin' toilet and flushed it. They tried to coerce us by saying, we're gonna seek life in prison for you guys because this is the same as treason, and you have I forgot what it was, 10 days, 2 weeks to negotiate a plea deal. I just laughed and threw it in the toilet.
What did the experience about? Did you feel that the courts were rigged against you?
Of course. Yeah, there's a partisan leftist courts. So here's the thing about D.C. The judges in many cases in our J6 community, they called Washington, D.C. the victim. They said the people of Washington, D.C. were the victim. And yet they insisted on drawing the jury pool from the so-called victim pool. It's like if I was being accused of robbing a Walmart, and they drew the victims, or they drew the jury from the people who were in the Walmart and out of the robbery. So, and a lot of the judges describe themselves as being D.C. residents and therefore victims too. So they refused venue change despite their own admissions that they were drawing the jury pool and themselves were victims. They still insisted on denying venue change. And the reason why they denied venue change, moving the trial outside of D.C., is they didn't want any precedent of venue change available for President Trump to use when they put him on trial. They wanted to make sure everyone was tried in D.C. so they could make sure that he was tried in D.C. And it's a foregone conclusion. It's like being tried in the Soviet Union. It's a show trial. You're going to get found guilty. And I knew that walking in. But like I said, I will never confess to a crime I did not commit. It's a matter of personal honor. And I will never bear false witness. It's a sin. It's in 10 Commandments for a reason. Right.
You said like Russia. It seemed during the Biden, Harris, Obama third term that there was a lot of Chinese-style influence about the way courts were run.
Well, sure. I mean, social credit score system was already here for Americans. In fact, I was purged in September 2020, before the election. We were purged off of all of our social media. We had 500,000 followers on our main Facebook page for Oath Keepers. We had thousands of local and state pages, all wiped out in one day, all gone. And if you were an administrator of any of those pages, your personal page also was completely disappeared.
It's on Facebook or where?
On Facebook. It wiped off, in one day. So I guess you can say it was our night of the long knives for our Facebook pages. We just wiped off the face of the earth. And then after that, same with Twitter. Off Twitter, off Instagram, everything we were wiped out. And we were deplatformed completely across the whole spectrum and then demonetized. Bank accounts were shut down too.
When Mark Zuckerberg claims that, President Trump, I'm sorry, but we were forced by the Biden administration to do all this stuff.
As I just purged off of Facebook just the other day. I started a new Facebook page using my...
Here in 2025?
Yes, just a few days ago. I can show you the screenshots. I started a new Facebook page using my name, posted nothing. All I did is friend other J6 political prisoners who had Facebook pages. They're still on Facebook, but all I did is open one up. I got suspended, and they said I'd violated the terms of service. I had posted nothing. So what did I violate? I guess my identity violates the terms of service. And that's one issue is that there are 14 of us. I'm one of the 14 that was commuted, not pardoned. That means my prison sentence was ended. I was set free, but I'm still a felon. I still can't vote here in Texas, and I can my VA benefits. I'm a disabled veteran, service connected, but the VA sent me a letter while I was in solitary confinement, letting me know that all my disability payments are terminated, no longer have any medical care, no longer any rights as a veteran, and I can no longer be buried in a veteran cemetery, which is the ultimate insult for a veteran.
Based on what? Guilty of a felony?
Yeah, because I was guilty of seditious conspiracy. So I'm commuted. I'm still a convicted seditious conspirator. So that's going to taint me the rest of my life. And I think that's probably why it could be an excuse that Facebook would use. And X. I was also kicked off of X. I just joined X, and I just signed up for X Premium Plus. You pay $299 for extra, profiling, whatever. Next day, I was also suspended. And all I had posted about was advocating for Jeremy Brown, an Oath Keeper Special Forces veteran who was still in prison. Just got out today, thanks be to God. He just got released today. So X also suspended me and said I'd violated the terms of service. So
for people who are under the impression that Zuckerberg's mea culpa,
it continues on. Yeah.
The suppression, repression.
Yes. I'm not the only one, but this is my personal experience. Right. And on X too. So Elon Musk's own platform. So there must be some stay-behinds from the old Twitter that are still in there monkeying around and suppressing, hardcore patriots.
Well, maybe Elon should take some time away from.
He needs to get that handled. He can delegate it, I'm sure, but someone's got to handle it. Because how can I I'm working now for Condemned USA as a national spokesman, and they helped me when I was in prison. They helped raise money for lawyers, provide me with lawyers, and in fact, one of their staff members picked me up when I got out of prison. It was really nice of her to do that. Jen did that.
Is there still work to be done in that area?
Because there's the J6ers, some of them are still in. Like Jeremy Brown just got out today. There's like 4 or 5 other ones that are same thing. They have cases where the argument being made by some judge or a U.S. attorney is that, this is not really a J6 case. I was having Jeremy Brown. They had a misdemeanor in D.C., but they did a search. The judge in D.C. ordered a search of his home, and during that search, on the way in, just like at Mar-a-Lago, this is his home's in Florida, they turned off the security cameras at his house on the way in. And then they found 2 grenades on him, that had no fibers from his house, no fingerprints, no DNA. So as an example of what they do to people. So we have other guys, and then they claim when he was pardoned, the claim was, well, that's not really a J6 case. That's a firearms case. It's like, no. The judge in D.C. issued the friggin' warrant for you to come search his house. It's straight out of that. It's straight out of J6. In the pleadings in Florida, when you were putting him on trial, you kept referencing J6 over and over again. It's a J6 case. So they finally acknowledged that. The DOJ had to step in and go, hey, we say it's a J6 case. They say it's a J6 case. It's a J6 case. So they finally let him out. So that's what's going to have to happen now. Now that Pam Bondi's in there, she's going to have her, hopefully very aggressively, go through it. And yes, each one of these cases are J6 related because the search, it's fruit of the poisonous tree. The search wasn't going to happen in the first place except for January 6th. That's why you're in the guy's house. Anything else that you claim that you found or anything else that he supposedly did, that's still J6 related. Tough. He's pardoned,
What's next for you?
So I'm advocating for getting those guys out first, but then we have other people that are being, like Tina Peters is a good example, out of Colorado. And under state laws, they've hammered her, just as they do with President Trump and Sidney Powell and John Eastman. So they're hammering people in state courts. Lawfare continues at the state level. Wherever the Democrats are in power, they're going to use the legal system as a tool of oppression against their political opponents, oppression and suppression. So yes, Tina Peters just got sentenced to 9 years in prison for challenging or questioning the fraud in the election. So they're criminalizing political opposition, they're criminalizing participation in the political system, and they're criminalizing people doing their job. She's an election official, so she has a job and a duty to stand up and say, hey, that's something hinky here. But they're criminalizing that and put them in prison. And part of the goal is to intimidate the rest of you to sit down and shut up and don't challenge them when they commit election fraud. So we need to get her out of prison, and what we're working on right now is trying to get it removed to federal court. Just as with President Trump, in New York, they used a state court to supposedly enforce federal law. Same thing here. This is about a federal election for president. If anything, it should be in federal court. So we're trying to remove that. So that's what we're looking at. And beyond that, there are pro-life demonstrators that are being oppressed. You've got gun owners being oppressed by leftist judges who hate gun owners. So it continues on. So we want to work for them and also We really want to see broad reform of DOJ and prosecutorial abuse and broad reform of the prison system.
What's the URL for Condemned?
So condemnedusa.com. Yeah. I encourage folks, they need your help. You don't have an ACLU, unfortunately, on the political right. ACLU won't help us anymore. The ACLU did nothing about January 6th defendants being held in solitary confinement for extended periods of time. I was in solitary confinement for over a year, and in pre-trial and during my trial, I had no access to a law library at all. I couldn't, I'm a Yale Law graduate, I couldn't look up case law or anything. No access. Oh, COVID, the law library shut down because of COVID. That was their excuse.
How are you able to keep your brain sharp?
Reading. I read a lot. I read Tolstoy.
There's a library?
Yeah, they had some books floating around that you could pick up and read. So in the SHU or in solitary, you had whatever's on the cart in your particular unit. But you could ask for it, you could request that the guard try to look for something. So I requested some Tolstoy, and I got one of them. I think it was Anna Karenina? Yeah, the really long one about the girl that commits suicide at the end. Yeah, I give away the ending. But yeah, that one, right. That listening to talk radio, I could listen to, Dan Bongino was on, and what's this guy's over here now? He's
Mike Gallagher?
Mike Gallagher, yeah. He was on.
Did you listen to Ben Shapiro?
Late at night sometimes Ben Shapiro would pop on. Yeah.
Mark Levin?
Mark Levin, yeah, where I was at Cumberland, I listened to Mark Levin every night. Mark Levin, Wendy Bell. I was on her show once, actually. Really nice lady. Yeah, good people. Yeah, I like Mark Levin. He's pretty sharp. He said the same thing about the election I said. He said, hey, this is clearly what the Supreme Court should have done is what they did back in Bush v. Gore, step in and go, wait a minute, under Article 2, we're going to have you have to use state election law as written by the state legislature. You can't just make up new stuff. And that's what they did. So, but unlike in 2000 with Bush v. Gore, in this case, the Supreme Court did not do their duty. They ducked it. When Texas sued Pennsylvania, that's under original jurisdiction, the Supreme Court is the trial court, and that's done. They don't have discretion to deny review. They're not a review court. They're the trial court. It's like Alito and Thomas were like, hey, we have no discretion not to take this case. But the majority went along with the majority of the Republicans went along with the leftists on the court and denied review or denied to hear the case. So
it seems that
the rumor we hear out of Supreme Court is a kind of whistleblower that said, hey, Roberts screamed at Alito and Thomas when they said that we have no discretion not to take this case. That Roberts, Chief Justice, screamed at them and said, if we reverse Biden's victory, they'll burn our cities down. We can't take this case, or they'll burn our cities down. That's what Roberts reportedly said. I find credibility in that. I think that's probably very likely true. Because how else do you explain it? So that threw us into a constitutional crisis. By them not doing their duty and their job, they threw this country into a constitutional crisis. Because you had a blatantly illegal and unconstitutional election. It violated multiple state laws, I believe in like 34 states. Yeah.
Are you interested in visiting Israel now that you're out?
Sure, why not? Yeah, let's do it.
So in Israeli politics,
get a passport.
Can you?
We'll find out. We'll see.
In politics, it's often said, well, if you want to accomplish something with Republicans, don't necessarily have a Democrat, have a Republican come in and he can get things that the Democrats want, but they couldn't. And a Republican can get it because they'll essentially betray what the interests are.
Maybe. So we'll see what happens with Robert Kennedy Jr. now that he's been kicked out of the Democratic Party and come over into the Trump camp. I hope, and same with Tulsi Gabbard, I think it's fantastic to have them both on that team. And what I hope to see is more people, like Tulsi Gabbard's book, it's a really good book, it's For Love of Country, and the subtitle is Walk Away from the Democratic Party. For love of country, walk away from the Democratic Party. Right.
But even though Mark Zuckerberg professes that they were not culpable in the censorship or the tracking,
yeah,
even though he professes it, does it persist?
Oh, of course it does. It's happened to me right now. So what's the excuse for that? I posted nothing. It's a really good test case, actually. All I did is open an account, posted nothing. How did I volunteer? How did I violate his term of service? It must be because of who I am. That's simply by being me. That's a violation of terms of service.
When President Trump, as a candidate, said, you know what, they're really not interested in me, they're interested in you, I'm just in their way.
Right, yeah. Well, they were also interested in him, and we were stepping stones to get to him. So the Jan.6th prosecutions, so we're going to look at it. He's certainly correct in the big picture. They're after all of us. That's true, right? Yeah. But
To restore
prosecutions, they saw us as a way to get to him. If they could prosecute us and either coerce us, this is one reason why I would never confess to a crime I did not commit. When you plead out and say, yes, I engaged in citizen's conspiracy, for example, we had 2 guys that did that. All you're doing is supporting their false narrative. I'll see 2 more have confessed that there really was a plot, an attack on the Constitution.
they were confessions under duress.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Oh my goodness, how are you? Really, nice to see
Stewart Rhodes, he's recognized everywhere he goes.
you tonight.
I think, the bottom line about the left in this country is that they were captured by the deep state. And they use their platitudes and ideology to fool them. They become useful idiots for the deep state. So they'll tell them, oh, this is all about DEI, all about equality, and the leftists will buy that. But really, it's all about power of the elites, and they're just manipulating the people on the political left. So what I would say to them is that take a good hard look at who you're in bed with, and listen to Tulsi Gabbard and Robert Kennedy Jr. as a reason why they left the Democratic Party. And if you want to fix things, then fix your own party. Make it back to the party of JFK. JFK was murdered by the deep state, by the CIA, because he was challenging their power. He was stepping out of line, and so did President Trump. So look past the propaganda on CNN and MSNBC, and I'm happy to sit down with rank and file leftists. I can talk to them. Now their leadership, the ones that are manipulating people, I probably got nothing for them. You're never going to reach them. Jimmy Raskins of the world, for example, no, you're not going to be able to talk to someone like that. They have no goodwill. So, but for the rest of the folks on the Democratic Party, just take a good hard look at what your party is becoming, and if you can, fix it. I'm working on the Republican Party. I want to fix it from the inside. There's a lot of things that I want to change within it, and I think Trump's down with that too. That's why Ron Paul, my old boss, I used to help him run for office, and he ran for president. Worked for him in Congress for a year. He got a lot of crossover Democrats that came over and joined the Ron Paul campaign because he was sincerely anti-war, and they knew that Hillary Clinton was full of crap. And so they came over, they crossed over for him. That's happening now again. There are people from the Democratic Party crossing over to Trump's camp, Tulsi Gabbard and Robert Kennedy Jr. being flagship examples. They're not the only ones, for good reason. So just think about that. Think beyond party and think about what you really stand for. And it really is, at the end of it, it's really about the people versus the elites. And that's a real fight. The left and right, Republican and Democrat, is divide and conquer. That's what I would want to say to them. And I'm all about prison reform for everybody. I know lots of guys in prison that were railroaded in there with like a lot of guys for ghost guns and ghost drugs, which means that there were no guns found, no drugs found, but some lying snitch who was been himself coerced and told the lie said they saw them with guns or drugs, and they're in prison for that. That's what they call ghost guns and ghost drugs. No actual evidence, just somebody saying they saw them. So I want to see all that done away with. I want to see the prosecutors who do that in prison, because they're doing it very consciously. They're committing felonies. All right?
All right, thanks so much.
Thank you. God bless. Take care.